Hi, they say there's two topics you should never talk about, politics and religion. So we're not going to talk about politics today, but we are going to talk about religion, because I think it's very interesting that a lot of us don't know about other people's religions, and because of that we sometimes discriminate. And so we're going to be talking about religion today and talking about some of the myths that we might want to dispel. So joining us, and I'm going to let you pronounce your name.
Farah Kazi.
Farah Kazi. And
Sally Nutini.
Yeah, because I call you Polisamo sometimes, right? And of course, I'm Karen Gibson, and we're going to start right into this conversation. So if you want to know anything about what's going on with the Muslims, we're going to try and find that out today. So Farah, we want to talk to you about, as I said, I've known your father for more years than I care to admit to, because he worked at Christ Hospital when I worked there,
Right.
when I first got out of nursing school. And I always saw him as a wonderful, caring person, and to this day I feel that way. He's taken care of my family, he's a physician, and I would trust him with anything. And I didn't know he was a Muslim to start out with, as he didn't know what religion I was.
Right.
Now there's all this controversy about Muslims, and I know they can't be bad because he's not. So let's start there. You have a campaign now because of that.
We do. I belong to the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam, which is a sect of Islam that believes in the promised Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. And we have started several campaigns over the years. We've had something called Muslims for Peace and Muslims for Life, which was to commemorate 9/11 and specifically to donate blood in memory of the 9/11 victims. And we've had other ones as well, but right now we have one called True Islam, and it's www.trueislam.com, in which we have 11 points that we ask people to read through, and then if they agree with them, to endorse it. We're trying to get as many people to endorse and understand what Islam actually stands for. And we say true Islam because we feel that our religion has been hijacked at this point by extremists and by other fearmongers and other people who really don't understand the religion and have probably not taken the time to actually read any of the texts or to practice the religion properly themselves, but are using it for whatever their political agendas are and are convoluting and denigrating an entire group of people in the process. So we wanted to take that power away from them. We want to take it back from them. We want to put it back into the common people. We want people to realize that our religion is a peaceful religion. It does not embody what ISIS is trying to embody. It does not believe in any of those tenets. It does not believe in violence. It doesn't believe in a holy war that's being waged. It believes in peace and tolerance and acceptance and inter-religious harmony and multiculturalism and diversity. And those are the things that, if you go to the website, you'll see all the points that we talk about. And we've basically tried to distill it so that whatever misconceptions we hear in the media, we've listed it as one of the points. So one of them specifically is about women, because women is always a misconception, as previously I was on here. So it talks about how the equality and education of women is tantamount to every Muslim. And then it talks about like a peaceful coexistence. And what is tremendously important in this context is loyalty to your country. And so whatever country that you belong to, you are loyal to that country. You belong to that country, you fully participate within that country, and you do not go against whatever the country has given you. We believe that if we're sitting in this country, we've been given a gift. And we, just like every other American, believe in the American Constitution and the ideals and the way of society, and we don't want to disrupt that. So, I would urge people that if you want to have more information, you would go to that website and endorse the points if you agree with them.
And what's your education?
I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by profession. I do quite a bunch of different things, but the short answer is I'm a lawyer, and I'm a mother, and I'm a part-time everything else.
Well, and everybody in your family, you have siblings that are all well-educated too.
Yes, yeah. I'm a family of 5. We are 4 girls and 1 boy, and we all have advanced degrees. So people are masters and
so there were no women in your family suppressed.
No, and I think that's just a misconception that I think a lot of people have. I think people talk about the oppression of women, but then they just pinpoint only Muslim women and say, well, because you are dressed the way that you are dressed or you look the way that you look, you must be the oppressed one, not realizing that the oppression of women is really a global problem that we have. And if we're really, truly dedicated to solving that problem and making women equal to men, then we need to not focus just on the Muslim women, but focus on women in general and look at all the problems that we're having and really raise them up.
Well, I noticed on the internet there was apparently some problem with Muslim nurses that were in the UK, and they were saying that they didn't want to wash their hands before certain procedures because they would have to pull their sleeves up too far.
Okay.
And is that a rule? I mean, are you supposed to wear sleeves down?
Well, okay, I guess basically what you're talking about is really about covering. And Muslim women take it and interpret it in different ways, but there is a tenet that says that Muslim men and women are supposed to dress modestly and conservatively and not draw unnecessary attention to themselves and to their physical appearance. They can draw attention to themselves by their intellect and by their spirituality and by the words that they speak, but they don't necessarily have to put their physical bodies and physical appearance on display. So whether people interpret that by meaning that they're going to wear longer sleeves, or that they're going to wear a scarf, or they're going to wear longer clothes, or they're going to wear whatever they want to wear, or an outer covering, that's a Muslim's prerogative to decide. I don't know personally about the nurses and what they were saying.
Well, what was interesting to me about it is they said they never said anything about the nuns not wearing, that they have worn headgear and they've worn long sleeves, and there's a lot of nun nurses that have been in hospitals, and I thought, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I forgot about that myself until they mentioned that.
Yeah, I think we have a disconnect. I think we have a real disconnect when we talk about Muslim women covering, because the underlying implication is that that means that they are symbolizing an oppressive regime or oppressive environment. And what they don't realize is that we have that throughout our society. I mean, we have women that are consistently complaining that they have to dress provocatively or sexy in order to get a job, or that particularly in this forum, for example, in media, that you have to look a certain way in order to be on TV, or that that you have to get the job by doing X, Y, and Z, or dressing X, Y, and Z. So we don't focus as much on that aspect of it, and we focus more on the fact that, okay, now she has an extra layer of clothing on her head. That must mean that she's oppressed, not realizing that the oppression is actually going both ways.
Okay, so what is the purpose of it?
So the purpose is, I mean, there's several. I think some people will say that there's personal elements. So if you take a couple of women and stand them up here in the studio right now, I'm sure each one will give you a different answer about their own personal reason why they did it. But the basic purpose of it is twofold. First of all, they ask you that it's an affirmation of your faith. And just like anyone else who believes in whatever faith they believe in, there are different rituals and different traditions and different attire that you will wear or do in order to affirm your faith and to present that to the world. And Muslim women who cover, and I keep saying that because not all Muslim women do it, but Muslim women who cover believe that their covering is an affirmation of their faith. So it brings them closer to their purpose with God and with their spirituality. So that's the first thing. And then the second one is something that people don't realize, but the hijab or the scarf is really supposed to privatize your beauty. So it's privatizing your putting an extra layer of protection on whatever beauty you are presenting to the world, and privatizing your sexuality. And I think people don't realize that when you say that you're oppressed, what that actually means. Oppression means taking the power away from someone, right? So what we're saying then is that when you cover up, you've taken the power away from a woman. But then what are we saying when we say that we don't say the same about a woman who's wearing more revealing clothes? Or
well, it's like modesty. We are talking about in the Christianity, it's modesty, but that's not in vogue anymore. I mean,
right.
Everything is.
Well, we always used to, in the Catholic and Episcopalian Church, we always wore things on our head when we went into church for many years. We always wore lace or hats,
I mean, I visit churches, I give talks at churches, and I see I still see women covering their heads when they go into the church, or they'll say, oh, I'm not appropriately dressed, I shouldn't be coming to church, I need to wear something longer, there's a sign of respect that you give to your religion and to your faith.
I wish people would all do that.
And so I think it's a good message that if you think about it in those terms, it's a good message that you want to give to your little girls, and you want to tell them that your inner beauty, what you can present to your world, your intelligence, your intellect, your spirituality, your mind is far more important than the physical beauty that you're presenting to the world.
And that's what I thought. I remember even going into nursing school, and some people were there to meet doctors and get married. I said, I came here to be a nurse.
Yeah.
I want to have a date, so he goes out with me for my mind. It's like, but okay, now I had another question for you, and I asked you this privately, but I said, I keep hearing that there's two, and correct me if I'm wrong about pronouncing anything, two Qurans. one talks about violence and one doesn't. You say there isn't.
No, there's one
Okay.
Quran. There's one book, and we're very clear on that because the book has not been changed. We very strongly believe that it hasn't been deleted, it hasn't been abrogated, it hasn't been amended in any way. It is the same as it was at the time of the Prophet. So, and you know, we're very strongly believe that has been untouched in that way. So when people say there's two Qurans or there's this Quran or that Quran, there isn't. There's one Quran.
And excuse me, could you say how old it is, or how? I mean,
So-
the Quran started, or was
well, the Prophet
inspired?
came, 1,450 years ago or something of
Okay.
that nature, right? So he came at that time. But the Quran was started to be inscribed around that same time, and then was collated together during the second caliphate, which is the second spiritual leader that came after him. So around that time, it actually became codified into a book.
So it wasn't rewritten by the new person.
No.
Okay.
No, it was everything that was, what was already written down, because as the prophet was speaking, as he was having these revelations, as we believe, or was having these conversations with God, he was actually having people write them down so that they would be, they would be immortalized. And I think the question then arises, okay, well, where are these verses coming from that people keep talking about? And the problem is that what they do, just like any other religious text, for example, if you take the Bible or you take the Torah and you just open up a page and you take out a line, you'll be shocked by some of the stuff that's being said in those books, right? There's some stories in there that even when I read it, I say, I have to go back and, okay, what's the context of this? So the Quran needs to be taken as a whole. You need to read the whole book and then take it in the context of the historical context and then the contemporary context of it. And what people are doing is they're picking and choosing, and they're taking things out and they're kind of slicing verses together, and then they're saying, well, this is what it says. And that's where the danger is coming from. And that's where other people then have an extra job and an extra burden, because now we have to go forward, and not only do we have to say, no, that's not what the Quran says, we have to correct those people who are purporting to be Muslims who are saying that, but then we have to go to the media and we have to say, no, this is what it actually says.
Well, it seems like it's similar, and with Bibles and the Jewish religion, you have to spend a lot of time to study. You just
Yes.
can't take one line and interpret it. But are you able to do a timeline? I mean, the Bible and the Quran, which is older? Or do you?
Well, the Quran is
Is
the newer religion, right? So Christianity came before.
No, I didn't know. That's why
Yeah.
I was asking you.
So
Okay,
so it was
Christianity,
Judaism,
and
Christianity,
and
and then
Muslim,
Islam.
Islam.
Yes.
Not Muslim. You say Islam.
Islam.
Oh,
Islam is a
okay.
religion. The followers of Islam are Muslim.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, now what about the praying? Because now there's controversy about people taking breaks to pray 5 times a day. Although I wondered why that happened, because they said sunrise. Now, do you have to be up at sunrise every day?
Yes.
See, I could never practice that religion. Oh, yes, I could. I'm still up sometimes.
You haven't gone to bed yet.
I know.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you just stay up,
Because
right?
they said sunrise, morning,
And that's the
afternoon.
hardest one, right? Because obviously everyone loves their sleep, so that's the
Right.
hardest one to do. But it is a very peaceful and very still time. And once you're actually up and you drag yourself out of bed and you actually go through the process of getting yourself ready for the prayers, then I'm always very happy that I did it, because
And
it's
how
just,
long
it's
are
that-
the prayers? Is there a
It depends
long?
on how long you want it to be.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain words that you have to say, and there's positions that you do in the prayers, but it can, usually by the time you get to my age, you've memorized it to such a point that you could say it really fast or you could say it very slow. And then there's always opportunity to just say extra. So if there's this particular, project that you have, or stress in your life, or, whatever you need guidance in, you can also do that
So
in
it's
your
5
own.
times a day?
It's 5 times a day.
So that's sunrise?
You do sunrise in the afternoon, then again mid-afternoon, then sunset, and then the evening when you go to bed, before you go to bed.
Well, that's Christian too. I mean, the AM, I don't know, it's terce, matins, vespers. I mean, it's spaced around that you pray different hours throughout the day.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that part of it is actually a really beautiful part, because all the Muslims around the world, they pray towards the Kaaba, and they pray to a central location. The Kaaba is located in Saudi Arabia.
Is this east? Are you praying?
Well,
it depends on where you're at.
It depends on where you
Yeah,
are, right?
okay.
So The Kaaba is central to all Muslims and where they pray. So if you think about it, as kind of like in poetry, you're thinking about all the people around the world and everyone at the same, essentially, a same appointed times are praying for peace and for acceptance and for tolerance, because those are the prayers that we're actually saying, and for guidance and for divinity and spirituality. So so there isn't anything harmful in that. And I think sometimes, like for example, I told you that I wanted to talk about Islamophobia, and you see these people that, they'll pray publicly, or they're praying in their mosque, and then we've had instances where they've actually attacked the mosque during the prayer time, or they've tried to rip off the scarf of a woman that she was praying, or there was just recently, there was a woman who attacked a family who was praying in the park, and she started, she threw some things at them. And you think to yourself, well, where have we come in society where that is a bad thing, where somebody is taking time out of their busy schedule and they're meditating and they're asking for guidance and they're praying for humanity, and that's now viewed as, a bad thing that you can attack.
Well, that happens in Christian churches too. People attack people. It happens in Jewish. Everybody gets attacked these days. It doesn't matter who you are.
And
really.
religion
and
in general has kind of been like that.
That has nothing to do with anything except mental illness.
Yeah.
It's like the guns too. I have to say, it's not the guns that are killing people. It's the mental illness that's killing people.
Right.
You take the guns away from all the good people, and the bad people still have a way to find them.
Yeah, but we shouldn't make it that accessible to the good people either, or to the bad people, I guess. I mean, because the problem is that we made it accessible to the good people, and then the bad people started coming and started taking more guns too, and we have assault rifles in schools.
They will continue.
So,
they will continue to get them no matter what.
Yeah.
So you're praying 5 times a day, every day of the year, and
every
children. When does the praying
usually
start?
about like 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, so very young.
Yeah,
7 or 8.
I mean, they don't necessarily do 5 times, but they'll start off with whatever they can do, and they keep going.
Incorporated into the prayer life, which is quite beautiful. And once again, the similarity with the liturgy of the church, with the Catholic religion, you all pray together. So
yes, we pray together. We stand shoulder to shoulder with each other, so that there's no difference.
But around the world, I'm saying too, that you know that you're praying as a community, so that increases the strength.
Increases the strength, exactly. And when we're in a mosque or when we're at home, we are supposed to pray shoulder to shoulder to each other, which is also another beautiful way that people don't realize, is that there's so much in Islam about equality and justice. So we are specifically told that whether there's a rich man or there's a poor man or there's somebody who's not appropriately dressed or somebody who is appropriately dressed, or whatever their circumstances are, they need to stand next to each other. You don't leave a gap between your people. And from a young age, we teach our children that you don't put a gap in between people. So when you're praying, you stand next to each other and you make sure that you're solidified in your effort, which is another, I think, a beautiful message to be giving to your kids, that you're not making, we don't really care if you like this person or you don't like this person, or you agree with them or you don't agree with them, but you're still going to stand next to them.
Well, it's kind of like the peace sign in the church now, too. Everybody's shaking hands and wishing each other peace.
Yeah.
So what have we not asked you that you would like people to know?
I think my main concerns were this anti-Muslim rhetoric that has kind of taken over. I think most Muslims have this concern right now because they're seeing it in their workplaces and discrimination. They're seeing it among their own children being bullied and harassed in schools. They're seeing the women who are scared to go out now. Especially those who cover, obviously, they're scared to go out in groups, and they're scared to go out alone because they don't know if they're going to be attacked or insulted in some way. And these are not rhetorical. They're not just hypothetical. These are actual instances that are happening.
Well, because they say that people could hide things also in your head.
I mean, they can say a lot of things, but I think the point of it is that there's first a deep misunderstanding of what Islam actually is, and then a complete inability or a misunderstanding once again of realizing that the ISIS group that people are, that we are talking about, that is a scourge upon all of our societies and our humanity right now, does not represent the rest of the entire population of Muslims.
Do they actually say that they're Muslim? Does ISIS actually say? And why is it called ISIL and ISIS? Why
it's Islamic State, and ISIS. I think if you look at their initial origins, they started in 2006 in Iraq, and they were started as a political mechanism by the West, actually, because it was an attempt to solve a political crisis that they had in both Iraq and then later on in Syria. So they were funded, they were equipped, they were trained by the West to solve this potential problem. What happened was that they realized they basically created a Frankenstein monster, and then this thing just completely spiraled out of control. And not only did it not solve the problems that the U.S. and the rest of its allies actually thought it would solve, but it's caused all these other problems as well. And then nobody could keep tabs on them. So now they've run amok, and they're all they're in all these different corners of the world, and people are panicked, thinking that, okay, now every Muslim or everybody who looks like a Muslim must be an ISIS sympathizer or supporter.
Are they all Muslims?
No, I mean, we don't consider them to be Muslim at all.
At all, okay.
And I'm very careful when I speak about them.
I mean, I've never heard them say
I don't really
anything.
hear them saying anything, to be perfectly honest.
That's
I mean, the
wondered.
videos that we see are obviously of them doing brutal, dehumanizing acts. I haven't actually heard them speak anything remotely intelligent. So I don't know. I don't know what their thing is, but I can say that it was a political.
They dress like them? I mean,
they came from that region, and they dress like them, and they'll spout out nonsense that every so often that saying that we have a justification because of this, or because of that, but their reasons are so many times they actually had a couple of people who actually have escaped ISIS, and they told them the people didn't even know how to pray. They didn't know how to read Quran. They didn't know the basic tenets of Islam, and yet they're standing before you and purporting to be Muslims. And I'm very careful that when I speak about them, I do not refer to them as Muslims. I do not recognize them as Muslims. None of us do. We don't identify with them, and we certainly can't understand their actions. So when people are asked me, how did you feel when ISIS did X, Y, and Z? I say, well, how did you feel?
I know.
Because as a human,
Yeah.
we have the same reaction. Obviously, it's the same disgust and loathing and complete fear and misunderstanding and complete, I can't understand another human being taking another human's life in such a vicious way. And I can't condone that, obviously. So I think I think there's a certain level where people don't realize that a Muslim who is just by nature of being a Muslim could never explain the actions of a bunch of criminals and serial killers.
Well, no one can understand.
Just the way that I wouldn't
mentally ill
ask a
people.
Christian to
Right.
say, okay, now explain to me the KKK or the IRA or the Lord's Resistance Army, and now explain to me why this is representative of Christianity. I would never.
And we didn't know that they
ask
were
that.
representing themselves as Christians
Yeah.
either.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I've
And-
always wondered how large the Islamic Muslim group is. I've read that they're the fastest growing religion in
They
the world.
are. And if you ask me for a number, I don't know exactly,
Well,
but I know it's like 1.5
But
billion
they
or
also
something
say
around
that
the world.
Muslims have to try and convert Christians. But I've never had that happen to me.
No,
So
and I think most
I don't-
people are probably, they recently, I just was telling you off the air that they recently had this survey where they said a good vast majority of Americans said that they don't know any Muslims. And the Muslims read that and they said, well, that's just because they don't
know you are.
realize that they're
Right.
with Muslims, which means that we're not forcibly converting anyone. We're not walking around and
Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses knock on the door.
And we know the Jehovah's
never had a
Witnesses because
Muslim
we
that-
see them,
Right,
right?
yeah.
But you don't see the Muslims,
Never at my door.
forcibly converting anyone in that nature. So our biggest goal, especially within the Ahmadiyya movement in Islam that we are part of, is that we try to educate. We do as much as we possibly can. We are open to dialogue. We welcome people into our mosques. We tell them repeatedly, our doors are always open. If you have questions, if you really genuinely want to know a Muslim or want to know what we believe in, please come and visit us.
When do you have services?
Friday prayers, and then usually on Saturdays and Sundays as well, we'll have something. We'll have but Friday is our holy day.
Is it Friday after dark or?
No, it's Friday
Like
afternoon.
Friday afternoon.
It's usually
okay.
around noon or 1. We do a prayer that as many
Does
people
that
can come
interfere
to.
with people's jobs? I mean,
It does. I mean, it does to a point, but we have the religion of Islam is rather fluid. So if you can't make it to the mosque, you try to do it whenever you can. You try to do it, in your office if you can do it. If you can't do it in your office,
I mean, I
you
had
go
a
to-
lot of employees and nurses at my business and in the hospital. I never knew of a Muslim asking to leave to
Yeah.
to do
I mean,
anything.
you do
No.
what's convenient to you, right? And what would be convenient to your job as well. I mean, there are obviously within our Constitution and within our legal system, there are religious accommodations that can be made, and there is obviously specific laws that prevent religious
I know, and
discrimination.
all the Jewish people used to get off on the Christian holidays, but the Christians never got off on the Jewish
Right.
holidays.
But the Muslim, when I
And the
worked,
Muslims really don't get off at all.
when
So
I worked at Rush, we had a chapel, so the Muslims would go and do the prayers there. But that would be with all the other people at the same time. I mean, the Christians would be praying and the Muslims would be there, so it was just a
Well, in
place.
actually,
Chicago,
in,
which was an amusement park, I can remember them sometimes going under the ramp. There was a large area, and I can remember a couple of people doing that. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
at the time. I wasn't aware of what they were doing.
I think things like that are those type of initiatives are really nice, though. I think it's a really nice way to bring everyone together if you can. I mean, I don't think anyone needs a separate space.
No.
I think it's nice, like in I traveled through London, and public areas would have an interfaith chapel, or they'd have an interfaith prayer room, and you would see, like you said, Jewish, and you'd see Christian, and you'd see Catholic, and you'd see Muslims, and they'd all just be sitting there, silently and reflecting and praying. And I thought it was beautiful. I thought that was, you would see that, you see it sometimes in
was
shopping
hopeful.
malls and in train
It was
stations.
very hopeful to
Yes.
see everybody together.
Yes, exactly.
And
And they
pray.
don't have to be, they don't have to be separate. There are a lot of commonalities, and if you're praying, you can pray together. That's not
And there's
not an issue.
coversity, not diversity.
Yeah.
The common. Did I
a
make
good
up
word.
that word? I don't know.
I think you might have. But we could use it. Coversity.
Yes.
Cohesive, I think.
There's more common than there is diverse.
Yes.
We only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to give it to you again to talk about your campaign and the website.
Well, I would say I urge people, I think, to go to the website, to www.trueislam.com. Go over there, look at the 11 points, endorse those points. The points are very clear. They're very easy to understand. Like I said, they touch on peace, they touch on tolerance, they touch on education, they touch on women's rights. Really, essentially, we've tried to cover all the questions that you might have about Islam, and we've put it into a very simple bullet point presentation for you. And then we urge people, read it, try to understand it, and if you accept that those are valid points to make, and that there is an actual need for us to continue that message, then you can endorse it, and you can just sign your name on the bottom, and you can spread it out to your social media.
Do they
or
say
whatever.
anything at the mosque about condemning the people that are doing these acts?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. I think that's another thing. I think there's a confusion about that there's not enough Muslims that are speaking out. I mean, we're all speaking out. People are writing and people are talking, and they're talking in their mosques, and they're telling their children, and they're talking amongst their family members. The problem is that up until just recently, they're not as visible in the media. It's much more exciting to show a person who's condemning Muslims than a Muslim who's saying, no, we're actually a peaceful group of people. So that's a media problem that we have. But yes, absolutely,
And we have that
condemn
throughout
it.
because the media always wants to go where there's a problem, and they
Yeah, where
always
the
want to make it worse.
sensationalism is, and where the excitement
And
is.
I
right?
always say, if the media would go home, the people would go home, because the only reason they're there is for the cameras.
It's true. I mean, we do have a problem. We have a problem with responsible media, and we have a problem where they don't realize that the actions and the rhetoric that they're giving in the media have serious consequences. And when you're denigrating a group of people, or you're marginalizing a group of people, or you're raising the hatred and fear-mongering against a group of people, those people are going to suffer, and their children are going to suffer. And there's, like I said, there's countless examples of people who have been killed in this country just simply because they look like a Muslim. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for a fellow Muslim or fellow American to sit there and think to myself, this is not the country that I know.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
It's been very
you.
good. She also speaks 5 languages, by the way.
Don't start quizzing me on that.
Don't start quizzing her on that. Okay, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
What are the 5?